So good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on managing your time off and your time off in lieu with HRLocker. My name is Christelle Rinn, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at HRLocker. So I'm going to really look at breaking up the webinar into two main bits. One where I'll be going through the different settings for how to turn on all your time off, make sure that you've got all your bank holidays downloaded, your carryover leave settings put in, and all your different leave types in terms of, do you have any shutdown or any Christmas Eve days or anything like that, any company days that you're giving to people. And then after that, I'm going to look at doing your time off in lieu settings. So one of the things that we've seen a lot over the last couple of months really is with the advent of the remote working side of things. And with that right to disconnect, a lot of companies have put in the time off in lieu setting for people when they're doing their timesheets, but it's just really important that you're managing it correctly. So we'll go through a couple of those things, and really happy to take any questions from people. We take them at the end. So we will have, there's a question and answer section, in Zoom. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, just put your question in there. And I have Jenny with me today here, and she's going to make sure that I see all the questions and sending them on to me. And I will answer all the questions at the end. There's Jenny. So please do just feel free to ask as many questions as possible. And then I always really like to stress with any of these webinars that if there is any questions that you would like if you'd like more in-depth one-to-one questions or anything like that, please do come to talk to us. We'd be more than happy to go through any questions with you or set up a time to go through things in more in depth with you. So, I'm logged into HRLocker at the moment. I'm hoping everybody can see my screen. We usually use Microsoft Teams, so today we're using Zoom. So please forgive me if anything, if I'm not too sure of my way around Zoom. So right now you can see, so I'm also really hoping that everybody is used to the new look and feel of HRLocker. And again, any feedback is always welcome on that too. So right now here, I'm logged in as the administrator in HRLocker. So I'm logged in here as Liz McMahon, and this is my dashboard. So I'm basically the main user of the system. So I'm able to do all the settings, anything that I can do. I can see everybody's information, and I really dictate how I want the system to behave. And right now I'm logged in, and this is my dashboard. But when I'm looking at doing my time off settings, I'm going to go here into settings. And all the settings are mostly started per office. So when I go into offices here, you'll see I have an array of different offices in this account that I have set up here. And one of the things to remember when you're setting up HRLocker in regards to your company, how you want it structured in your office setting, don't think of the offices as purely just location. Think about what kind of settings you want to apply to those people in that office. And that's really important. So the two main questions that I think people need to start off with when they're setting up that office is, if we look at this one here, the head office, is, do people in this office have public holidays? And if people are different, if some do and some don't, or some are placed in different countries, you need to set up different offices for them. So I'm just going to show here's the head office. I'm going to go into my time off settings by pressing settings and time off over here. And as you see here, I don't have any of my public holidays downloaded. So really important for customers who have been using HRLocker for a while, you'll know to come in here. During the year, we have public holidays. We usually about 12 months in advance, but sometimes they change. So we do put them in the system about 12 months in advance, but just make sure you're coming in here and downloading your holidays, maybe kind of June of the year before or something like that. But if you haven't done it, no problem. You can just do it now. So here I'm going to go into for the sake of this, I'm going to be downloading the Irish bank holidays. Okay, I'm going to go into Ireland here and I'm going to import them. So as you can see, we have a lot of countries in here. I think there's over kind of 51 or something like that countries here that we have the public holidays here for. But if there is a country that you need the public holidays uploaded for, please come and contact us and we'll get those public holidays set up for you here. And then you can use them year on year. So as you can see, now these holidays here, they've come into this office. So these are going to be public holidays for anybody who is in this office. So what does that mean? It means that if, for example, let's do the Easter Monday here, it's the 5th of April. It means that if I'm working on that day, if I'm working on that day, I get that day off. And what does it mean if I request a week holiday? Is that day does not count as an annual leave day. So it is important that you download the public holidays. So when people are making that annual leave request, that day doesn't count, that it's not subtracted out of their annual leave. So now that the public holidays are put in, there's a couple of things that you need to kind of have a think about is what other holidays does your company give to people? So in Ireland, a lot of the time companies would give either Good Friday off as a company day or Christmas Eve off as a company day. And that's fine. We can go into the system here. Press add. I'm going to add Christmas Eve in here. I'm going to put it in here. So the 24th of December. Okay. And this is where you need to make the decision. You see where it says here, flag as annual leave and deduct from all staff's annual leave. So your decision here is, am I giving Christmas Eve as a day off to people? That doesn't count towards their annual leave. And we're giving them an extra day's holiday. Or is the company just closed on that day and I expect people to use that day out of their holiday allowance? So if I want to deduct that day from people's annual leave, I'm going to press this little tick box, or if I'm just giving it as an extra day, I don't press the tick box and I just press submit. And then that acts just like a regular public holiday. If somebody's books that week off, Christmas Eve doesn't come out of their annual leave days. So have a think about, so this is really where you need to think about what your forecast is for the next 12 months. Think about if you're going to have a Christmas shutdown. So if you're going to be closed for the week and a half, 2 weeks over Christmas. So do you want everybody to take those days off? And that's what you can start doing now. So if you're closed for those 2 weeks over Christmas, we can start to put in those required holidays. And that's where I'm going to go here. I'm going to go add. Okay. And we're going to put in, so let's have a look at how Christmas falls this year. So we've given people Christmas Eve off. The 25th and the 26th are going to move over to the 27th and the 28th because they're bank holidays. But if I'm going to be closed for this week, that means I need everybody in the company to take off the 29th and the 30th and the 31st. So there's 3 days I want to straight away take out of people's holidays. So I'm going to put in the 29th here. And I'm going to put in Christmas leave. But I'm not giving this to people as just a day off. I'm taking it out of their holidays. So I'm going to put it here and put it as a flag as annual leave. So I'm going to press that. And you'll do that for each of the days. Okay, we'll just do another day there just to make sure. Christmas leave. We're going to put it in as into December again. Select the 30th. And again, we're flagging as annual leave. Okay, I'm going to show this to you in the calendar in a minute. So that means, again, everybody who's in this office gets those public holidays off. They're getting Christmas Eve off as a company day that we're giving. And we're taking these 2 days off because the office is closed for those days. Okay. So now that you have those kind of public holidays set and you have those, that decision made of who's going to be in this office, we can look at the different annual leave types, which is just underneath here. So if I scroll down here, you'll see here it says time off requests and rostering request types. So this is where you're going to, really important that you're populating, first of all, with the mandatory types of leave. So they would be carers leave, adoptive leave, maternity leave, things like that. Make sure you're looking towards your own country's legislation of what the mandatory leave is that you have to offer. So say, for example, here we'll put in, so we have paternity leave here, jury duty, which is a mandatory annual leave type. So, sorry, not annual leave type, a leave type. So we go into add here. I'm going to put jury duty. Okay. It's not deductible. So in terms of legislation here, it means that if somebody's called up for jury duty, we can't make them take a day's holidays. It means it's the type of leave type that we have to allow people to take, and it doesn't deduct it from their annual leave. So we don't make it deductible. The couple of things that you can decide to do here is, one of the things here is the private leave type. So what does that do? It means that when you look at the who's off calendar and you're going to look at who's off, do you want other people in the organization to see what type of leave this person is on? So jury duty, maybe that's totally fine. You're happy for other people to see that John in head office is on jury duty that day. But have a think about, say, around the types of leave like maternity leave or antenatal requests or doctor's appointments or things like that. Sometimes those leave are things that you want to remain private. Or even if it's a case of maternity leave, sometimes, you have to be kind of, thoughtful and really use your empathy around those types of leave. So maybe put that as private as well, because maybe the person hasn't told the whole office that they're going on maternity leave. And all of a sudden they're going to look at the who's off calendar and see that Jill in head office is on maternity leave. So everybody now knows she's pregnant. So, just be kind of a bit mindful when you're setting up the leave types, which ones you want to be private and which ones you're happy for the whole company to see. So, so we'll go back to the jury duty one. So we've got jury duty here. I'm going to put that as private just because, sometimes people might not want them to see that. It's not deductible, and that's very important. Mandatory leave types are not deductible. And so these settings here, I'm going to go into a little bit later because, like I said at the beginning, we're going to look at the time off and lieu separate. And then also we're going to spend a little bit of time on how that remote working out of office works as well. So we're going to press submit here. And now you'll see here, we've got the jury duty type. So that means that anybody who comes into this office has that type of leave that they can request. So again, very important when you're deciding on your office structures and who goes into each office. Let's decide on, okay, so if somebody is in the UK or they're in Ireland or they're in Germany, you're going to have to split them up to see what types of leave that they are able to request. So if somebody's in Ireland, obviously you want them to have the mandatory leave types that are required in Ireland, likewise for UK, likewise for Germany. Okay. So then if I'm scrolling down here, so you have all these leave types put in and you're happy with that, you're going to keep on moving down here. And two more settings that you really need to think about here. Again, these are very individual to companies. Happy to have a discussion with somebody on how it might work for your company, but these really are personal company decisions that you need to make. The first one here is, I'm going to show you the who's off calendar in a second, and the who's off calendar is where you have an overview of the office, of who's in the office, what days people are in, what days people are off, and who's on annual leave. So what, who's actually not available. And if for some reason you don't want the regular employees to have access to that who's off calendar, you turn it off. Okay. Now that means that the managers and the admins will still be able to see who's currently off or on, who's rostered on that day. But the regular employee only has access to their own calendar. Again, company decision to make that you decide who do you want that on or off. And the next one here is the carryover policy. So carryover policy is important to get right. Presumably it's in your handbook where it tells people basically, at the end of the year, how many days are they allowed to bring forward to the next year. So I would certainly say at this stage, especially if you're in the UK with furlough at the moment, that there has been a lot of talk and legislation put in around that companies are able to that carryover policy doesn't apply anymore. So make sure that if you're doing it this year in the UK, that you're changing your carryover policy. Now you can still put in manual adjustments, but just important to make sure that you're aware of any individual new legislation that's coming in around the carryover. And also, I think as well, yes, you can put in the mandatory the company setting around carryover, and usually it's kind of around 5 days. But I would also always suggest to companies that, yes, very important that you may have a setting of 5 days, but if on individual circumstances, if somebody, maybe has been on sick leave or something like that, and or you're happy for them to bring over 3 days into next year or something like that, you're having those individual conversations with people, and you can do that as a manual adjustment for people as well. So that's really important as well to just kind of be mindful of and think of. So the other thing to mention here is that if you want to change, if you've come in here and looked at it and said, oh goodness, our 2020 carryover policy was actually wrong, please come and have a talk to us about that, and we can backdate that and change it for 2020, because changing it here won't update for 2020. So just make sure that you come and talk to us about that. Okay. So now that we have everything kind of set up here, and you'll see down here there is the time off in lieu, which I'm going to go use as a second part of this webinar in regards to how we set up time off in lieu for people. So I'll come back to the setting, but just remember that that's where that setting is. And then the very last thing on the settings page, which I have turned on, is the allow annual leave accrual option. So what that means is, for a lot of companies, if people are they're entitled to their 25 days annual leave per year, or they have a set number of days per leave, that's fine. You're going to go in, give them their 25 days annual leave, and that's all fine. But for other individuals in that company, or it could be a whole company-wide thing, whichever, if you allow this annual leave accrual option, it means that people can they don't get that set number of annual leave days. It's tied to their timesheet. Once they submit a timesheet, it gets multiplied by a certain percentage, whether it's 8% or whatever it is you've agreed with your employee. And then it automatically puts in that holiday entitlement. So again, they don't get that fixed type. So now that we've set all of that up, it's now a time where we can actually have a look and see how that all works. So I'm logged in here as Liz McMahon. And when I go to my time off, just as a regular employee, I'm going to see here that I have 20 days annual leave. I carried over 5 days from last year. I've already taken these days off, so my balance for the rest of the year are 23.5 days. But what I want to show you is, first of all, this is where the drop down is. So this is where I put in that jury duty type. So when I select a day off, that's what's going to come in here. So this is where, when we're putting in those annual leave types, this is where it populates. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to show you here is the 2 days that we put in at Christmas time. And they were mandatory company leave days that we put in. Okay. So you see here, 1 day is being taken off as I'm working that day. The other day was applied to me, but it's actually not one of my working days. So if you see here, 0 days has actually come out because it's a mandatory company leave day, but I'm actually not working that day. So, I don't need to use a big day's holiday for that. One of the nice features about this is there is an Ical Feed, which creates a separate internet calendar that you can link up with your Outlook or your Gmail, but it is a separate calendar to your own calendar. Or you can just press this add calendar and it downloads a little file that you can populate that time into your actual Outlook calendar and puts you kind of off for that day. A couple of different options there. So as an individual employee, the other nice thing, again, really depending on if your company has turned on that Who's Off calendar, are people able to see it or not? I can come in here to the Who's Off calendar. This gives me an overview of basically of my office to see what days I'm off and what days I'm not on. But if I go here to December, sorry, just blocking my screen here. I'm going to see how those public holidays have affected me. So I can see here that, the brown days here are public holidays. I have a mandatory company leave on this day. So you can really see, and the gray days are days that people, it's not part of their working pattern. So Liz has a bit of a funny working pattern here. So she does Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So, it doesn't matter what the person's working pattern is. You can start at a high level, put in all those public holidays. They're only relevant if that person is working that day. Obviously, make sure that in terms of your payroll, that you're taking that into account for public holidays. But then in terms of if it's an annual leave day that you're making people take off, or things like that, if it's a company shutdown, you can have and see how that works for people. And you can view this by office or department, or if people want a bigger view of this, because we're always getting asked, saying, I think this is just too small, we have the classic view here, which will open up a larger view of the calendar, which will give everybody that full amount. Okay. So now that we've looked at here, so the other thing I'm just going to show you here is, I'm going to show you here how Liz's annual leave works. So let's just take a quick recap. We've put in public holidays for the office. We put in any company shutdown, any leave types that we have, or any days that a company is giving. We've understood what our carryover policy is. Definitely this year is a little bit different. So we're thinking about how furlough is going to affect our carryover. We put in, are people allowed to see the who's off calendar, and all the different mandatory leave types that are available to my company or to people in that office. So I've all that set up. You only have to do that once, so that's okay. And then I need to think about, so for those who have been using HRLocker for a while, people have their annual leave days set up, that's fine. The only time you're ever really going to come back in here and change it is if people's way of working have changed or they've received additional annual leave days. So one of the things you'll see here is that 2020, that leave year has closed, so that's done and dusted. And I have now been, so a new leave type has been allocated to me. It's this green one over here. And so you can change what way the annual leave works for this person. So a couple of different settings here just to consider when you're setting somebody up, or you may want to change somebody, but when you're setting somebody up, you've got a couple of things to think about. Is one, a holiday is allocated or a holiday is accrued for this employee. If holidays are allocated, it means somebody's getting that fixed number of days, 20 days or 25 days, whatever it is. So you're getting that fixed number of days. Or if holidays are accrued, they start off with 0 and it's linked to their timesheet. Their timesheets are up here. So for every hour they work, it's multiplied, well, actually for every minute they work, it's multiplied by a certain percentage that you can set. So again, decide on the two different types. So for this purposes, we're going to leave it as allocated. So Liz is, she's in days. So that's the other decision I need to make is, does this employee, are there holidays in days or hours? So do I get 20 days annual leave or do I get 140 hours annual leave? So just have that, make that decision. It's something you can change, but it's probably, it's presumably in the person's contract. If it's in hours works really well for people who have very varied kind of ways of working. So if somebody works 3 hours on a Monday and 6 hours on a Thursday and 8 hours on a Friday, I would certainly suggest that person, that you put them on an hourly holiday entitlement, because that means that when they're requesting their leave, that the exact amount of hours that they work each day is taken out of their hourly allocation. So for people who are working kind of strange days or non-consistent days, better word, I would certainly say use that hourly option. But for people who are just standard, 20 days annual leave a year, they work 9 to 5, 3 to 5 days a week, whatever it is, I would say just put them on days. But again, whatever is in their contract is important as well. So in the middle of the year, for some reason, if this person has, so you made all those decisions, that's great, they've started. And in the middle of the year, for some reason, if they've either increased annual leave, or maybe they've gone to a 4-day week, or maybe they've increased their hours, whichever it is, you can add a new holiday entitlement here. When you add a new holiday entitlement, it creates a second row here, and you decide when it's going to be effective from. So you see here, this first annual leave entitlement was effective until the 26th of January. So if I want to change the line down here, I need to change what the end date of that first entitlement was. So maybe this might, it'll be till the 31st of March, whichever it is. And that'll update this one down here when you put in your annual leave entitlement. So maybe I'm going to change this person to being, she's got more days. Okay. So when you're putting in those leave types, what will happen is she won't all of a sudden just go up to 27 days. The system will calculate, because it works that 27 days was actually a 12-month accrual, but obviously she's only got 10 months of the 27 days. So the system will calculate how many days of the 27 she's actually entitled to for this year. Now, you don't need to do anything else next year. Next year will just roll over and Liz will automatically be assigned 27 days and she'll get the full amount. So just make sure that what a lot of people do is they make the calculation themselves and put in the amount there of what they've kind of calculated for the 10 months. So just to take some time off yourself, you don't have to do that. Put it into HRLocker and it'll calculate it for yourself. Okay. So really around the annual leave, that's kind of the main settings for people. And it does seem, I spent 20 minutes talking about it here, but really the main settings you do once, you set them up per office, you put in your public holidays, you decide what your annual leave types, the mandatory leave types are never going to change. You put them in once. And then the only difference is that you should be looking at on a year-to-year basis is obviously the Christmas shutdown will maybe change. So just look at the different annual leave types. So the different annual leave days you're going to close there if you want to put in the mandatory company leave. Or, just have a think about what other, maybe you might get some new leave types. Maybe this year you might allow people to take study leave and you might allow people to take 2 days study leave or something like that. So, but on average, most of those settings are, 90% of them are done and you don't really go back and change them. And then on an individual basis, you'll come in here, maybe increase people's days or things like that. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the report section here, but the key thing here is that anything you put in the system, and I'm like a broken record saying this, so please excuse me if anybody's listened to me on any other webinar, is that anything you put in the system, you can take out of the system. So one, we'll have a spreadsheet here as well, so you can download anything. The two most important ones for you to download is the annual leave summary. So this is just going to give you an overview of how many annual leave days people are entitled to, how many sick leave days people have taken, manual adjustments, carryover, how many days they have left. So a very just overview of it. Whereas if you want to actually drill down a little bit more and see, okay, well, how many days, when were the days that Liz took off? When were the days, what type of leave Liz took off? You're going to go into the all leave and that'll download every single day that Liz has had off for whatever period here that you choose. And then you can also, really, this is something that you should be looking towards the end of the leave year, but I'll just briefly mention it here, is that it's important that towards the end of the year that you're looking at your balance of people's leave, so that you don't want to make sure, yes, we're in a bit of a strange times here where a lot of people didn't take leave. We've got the furlough issue, people are still accruing leave. Here in Ireland with the PUP scheme, people aren't accruing leave. It's all very complicated at the moment, but make sure on any normal given year, you'd be looking at around September, October time, see what your balances are for the year and seeing kind of which departments or offices you need to be looking at to make sure that they're taking their leave. So just keep an eye on it. Okay, so that's the time off side of it. If anybody wants to go more in depth with me on the time off side of it, please do book a call. Jenny is going to send out a lot of information with a copy of this webinar anyway. And we can go through either how to set up those individual leave types or what way your people should be set up. Should they be an hourly or daily or what way is best for you to do that? But so the second section of this webinar that we were going to talk about is the time off in lieu. So again, I'm sure you guys remember, if we go back to settings here, the time off in lieu settings are controlled either at an office level or an individual level. So there is that office level toil type, but most people would really do it at an individual level, but I'll show you both. And again, it is a company preference. So we're going to offices here. And you scroll here and we'll see time off. So that's where your time off settings are. Scroll the whole way down here. And if it's not enabled for you, you'll just have this little tick box to tick here. and you decide, so everybody in this office, are they allowed to accrue time off in lieu? And to really, really put it in one sentence is, what will happen is when somebody submits a timesheet, I put in here that their standard working hours, 37.5 hours. If they go above that 37.5 hours, it's going to start clocking up hours that the person can take in a leave type called time off in lieu. And you can kind of set different kind of leave types here. Okay, so different time off in lieu settings here. So a couple of things that you need to decide is, and this is why Toil sometimes works better on an individual level, but again, I'm showing you both. I'll show you the office level and the individual level. So at an office level, I can decide, well, every single person in this office, they work a standard working week, they work 37.5 hours. Their standard working day is 7.5 hours. I want people to, this is the expiry of toil again, is something very individual to a company, where the decision is do I want people to accrue hours forever and it never expires, or do I want to make sure that any time off in lieu that person has accrued, that it expires every month? Again, completely up to an individual company. So for this, I'm going to leave that it expires. So this one, I'm going to say unused toil. I'm going to expire it every 2 months. And on the 8th of July, every 8th of July, it's going to expire all the unused toil. Again, totally up to an individual company. And then here's kind of when, and then the other two tick boxes here, again, something for an individual users to think about, yourselves as companies to think about is, do I want companies to be able to book time off in lieu, like to take an hourly booking? So do I want them to just book an hour, maybe from 4:30 to 5:30 on a Monday? Or do I want them restricted that if they're taking time off in lieu, they have to take it in full days or half days? So if you're happy for them to just take the hourly option, you can create the book toil leave by hour. Or if you want to restrict them to only selecting half days and days, just don't tick that box. And then this little setting here, this is important. If you do not want to apply all these settings to every single person in the office, do not press this apply toil settings to all employees. If you do, obviously press the button and press submit. And then these toil settings will be applied to every single person in the office. So that's kind of like pressing that big red button. You need to decide, are you applying this to everybody or not? And if it is everybody, that really makes your life easier. But most of the time, things are never that simple. Most of the time, it's an individual setting. So I'm going to go into Liz here again, and I'll show you how you set her up on an individual time off in lieu basis, which usually is the case. So you might have to do this for each person. So when I look at Liz, I'm going to go here into her settings and scroll the whole way down here. And you see here, well, if toil wasn't enabled, I'd have this ticked off, but I have enabled it, so it's on here. And there's two things to decide here for her is, one, allow negative toil. So what I'm asking here is, do I want her to be able to go into minus numbers with time off in lieu? And so I can put in here her standard working hours, or maybe 30 hours, her standard working days, 4, whichever. Okay. So for Liz, she doesn't work 37.5 hours. She only works 30 hours. So when she goes over 30 hours, it's going to start clocking up toil. Two things to remember here is we're going to fly back here to the settings. How does she take time off in lieu? So this is important. You're going to create here, head office, time off. You need to create a way for her to take that toil. So you're going to add a leave type. So I went into offices, time off, scroll the whole way down here, and I need to create a time off in lieu leave type. So one of the things I've learned is that, I throw around the word toil. That's how I refer to it. That's how I've referred to time off in lieu my whole life. But sometimes in a company, they may have a different word for it, or they may use a different language for it. So if toil is not what you use internally in your company, don't call it toil, call it something that is applicable to your company. So for this, we can call it toil, but obviously, make sure you're calling it something that makes sense to your company. You're going to scroll the whole way down here and make it as a time off in lieu type. Now, important thing to remember here is maybe you do not want other people to know that Liz gets time off in lieu. And if you do not, you create it as a private type. Now that we have done that, we've created this toil type. When I go to this over here, because she has time off in lieu, she gets this other graph here. So as soon as you enable time off in lieu, she's going to get this other graph here. I can see she's 13 hours to take, and we created that time off in lieu type. So I'm going to, in her type of leave, she has a toil option. When she takes a day off, let's take a day off, I think. Let's take the week off, will we? When she takes out of the toil there, oh gosh, I don't have enough days. So exactly. So I have not allowed negative toil tab. So she can't take those the amount of days off. When she takes a day off, it's going to subtract out of her days here. So let's see what day we're going to take off here. So Liz, she's a funny schedule. She works on a, let's look at what date are we today. So we'll look at taking Wednesday, the 27th off as toil for Liz. So we're going to go into time off. We're going to go into toil, and today is Wednesday the 27th. And you'll see her time off has been requested. I'm logged in as an admin, so it's automatically going to take the time off, but usually the email will go to our manager. Our manager will have to come in here and approve it. So there's still always that approval process. It still counts here. And you see her toil numbers are clocking down. So, that's the toil it's quite simple. It just gives them a different graph there, and it's dictated by her timesheet. So every single time she submits a timesheet here, when it's approved, the hours will be added to her toil calculator. At any stage, the toil logs are down here. If you scroll the whole way down here, you'll see here, that's her toil logs. And for every, if I press show all here, I'm hoping that she has some information from the previous year. So for every timesheet that has been approved, it'll log down here. Yeah, so you can see here so for week 11 of 2019, these are the hours that she accrued for every single time she went above and beyond her working hours. And that's actually one thing that's been asked several times of me this year is that at any stage, if you want to look at the previous years, you always have access to that information. So you press that show all button and all the information will pop up here. Okay. So and then again with toil, everything is here in the report side of it. So you're going to go into your time off. You're going to go into your time on, my apologies. You're going to go into your downloads and your toil reports are here. Okay. So at any stage, you can see what toil information people have. So time off in lieu, I just think, is one of those things that it can be really beneficial and work really well for some companies. But it's important that you have clear rules around it. You have told people how it works, what the expectations are, that maybe it doesn't last forever, maybe it does last forever. And if you allow it to last forever, make sure that people aren't all of a sudden got 600 hours of toil built up. So it is important that you are that you're managing it. So I would say for anybody, if you do have it in your company, it's a wonderful perk for people to have, but make sure you're managing it appropriately. And this does give you a very good overview of how to manage that, which is good. So the very, very last thing, because I just got an email from Jenny, they're saying move up for time. So I've got one more thing, and then I'll go to the questions and answers, if that's okay. So the other thing that obviously is very topical at the moment is that working from home request. So one of the things is that people have the right to request to work from home, and that's the key. They have the right to request to work from home. It doesn't mean that you have to give it, but you do need to make sure that you're keeping a log of that request. So we're going to go into time off here. This is how I suggest that you do it. Honestly, happy to have a further discussion with people, but this is how it works very well in HRLocker. You're going to create a leave type here. We're going to have a rostered on, because working from home, you are still rostered on. You just may not be in the office. And we're going to call it here, working from home request. Okay. I'm happy for it to be, because if it's rostered on, it comes up as a different colors on the who's off calendar. So I don't want to mark it as private. Okay. And so that means that when an individual, we're going to go back here to the time off section. So when an individual requests working from home request, they can request the days they work from home. Very important then is that request goes to their line manager, and their line manager either has the option to approve it or to reject it. So now, obviously, make sure that you're okay with the legislation now in terms of that request from working from home, but make sure that any rejection that you have there, that it's a valid reason, to make sure that you're not getting yourself in any hot water. So, but at least you have that kind of to and fro, you have that. And then very nicely on the calendar here, you'll be able to see that rostered on type, which is a purple. So it'll come up here as that request to work from home in purple. Or say for ourselves in HRLocker, we have a fully distributed team, a fully remote team. So, people don't need to work from home. They're already working out of the office. So working out of the office here can be in yellow. If you're creating a leave type of working out of the office that you want to, that's going to come up in yellow. I'm just going to explain the difference. Going to offices here, settings, time off. When you're creating that annual leave type, you'll see here there's a out of office type. That's automatically approved. So the key difference here is, do you want people's working from home to be automatically approved, or do you want an approval process? If you just want it to be automatically approved, so it's really just recording when people are working out of the office. A couple of good things for that is if you're paying any tax, or if you want to claim your remote working tax credit or anything like that, it's a nice way to be able to kind of have overview of the days, things like that. So you create your home working or whatever it is. It's a out of office type, and this automatically gets approved. So that's the key. It'll come up there will be a log of the days a person is working remotely, and it will be on the calendar as yellow as well. So I really hope that was informative for people. I've got a couple of questions here, which I am going to, again, my first time using Zoom, so I'm hoping it's very easy for me to go in here into the questions. Yep, go into the questions and answers section. And I shall start from the top. So when you add extra holidays on the bank holidays list, is that just for that year, or does it carry over? So it's just for that year. So why is it just for that year? It's because maybe when you add, for example, that break time for Christmas, which I'll actually give you an example here. So when you go into offices and time off, we're just going to add one. Christmas is probably the easiest example, so apologies for using it again. But the days that you require people to take off every year for Christmas changes every year, or Good Friday changes every single year. So you will have to put them in every single year. So say, for example, this year, I need people to take off the 29th, 30th and 31st, where when it fell last year, I needed people to take off different days. So you do need to put them in every single year. And purely that's just because the dates change every year. So we can't keep them in every year. Okay. So my next question here is, an employee submitted last year's holidays in January this year, and these days weren't deducted from their annual leave balance. So yes, that is how it works. So in 2020, so I mean, we sent a lot of kind of communication around this in December that once the 2020 annual leave year finishes, that calculation is done, and then it's put away. And that figure will never change. And so even if you're doing any changes or anything like that to that 2020 year, it's not going to update the calculation. Now, if for some reason, and really that's just to make sure that the reports that you are downloading at the end of December 2020 are the final reports, because what we found over the last few years, now that is a change we brought in this year, but what we found over the last few years is that we were getting queries from customers saying, I downloaded this report on the 31st of December and it's different to the one that I downloaded in February. And when we looked at it, we're like, well, because there's some outstanding leave balances, or some, you hadn't approved some leave and things like that. So the decision was made that what happens in 2020, if it's not approved on the 31st of December, it is not done the last calculation. Now, in saying that, if you do have a number of outstanding ones, please come and talk to us and we can make some arrangement that we can force that calculation for you. But that really is the premise behind it, is that once you download that final annual leave report on the 31st of December, that is that's finite. That's the report that you're going to be working off of. But again, if you do have a lot of outstanding annual leave, please come and talk to us. Now, what I would say to you is that if somebody has requested those annual leave, which is absolutely fine. And when I have the next question is, how can we fix it? So I shall tell you is if you go in here, so maybe Liz has requested, she was late putting in holiday request. She put in 3 weeks holidays for December. You're going to scroll the whole way down here. You're going to put in a manual adjustment. You're going to add an adjustment saying 5 days. Make sure you're putting a note in saying annual leave from 2020. Oops, December. Put in the dates, whatever it is, 15th to 20th. Okay, and that'll subtract her 5 days from her. Oh gosh, my apologies. I gave her 5 days. I didn't subtract them. So don't do that unless you want to give them the extra days. I'm just going to delete that. And it's live TV. You're going to add the adjustment. You're going to put in minus 5 days. Important. And you're going to put in annual leave for 2020. December. And you're going to submit. And she's got minus 5 days there. So that's important. So you can see, so you'll still have the log of it. But if there's one or two, just make a manual adjustment. If you have a lot of them, come and talk to us. But that is the key, is that on the 31st of December, that's the correct. So it's to make sure that, you're communicating with everybody, is get those annual leave days in as soon as possible. Okay, so hi there. Can you set up Toil to take 1 hour off or 2 or 3 hours off, but not necessarily full half days or full days? So there is always a management intervention. So you can't make it that they can't take off a full half day and a full day. However, what I would say is that if you only want people to take an hour or two off for a Toil, that's where your management intervention comes into place. So that that's how your Toil policy is that we allow people to take an hour or two off. We do not allow people to use Toil for more than 3 or 4 hours, whatever it is in your own company policy. And that when somebody requests a time off in lieu type, that the manager will always see, well, this person has requested 5 days, then the manager has got to kind of step up, put that rejection and say, look, we don't allow that to happen. We only allow for 2 or 3 hours. And that's, I think with any system, it's really important that, you can put rules in place, but it's important for the employee communication so that they understand how time off in lieu works. And that's why I would definitely say I think time off in lieu is great, but it's really important that it's communicated correctly to your employees so that they understand how it works in your company. Because some people, they may have worked in a previous company that allows them to have loads of time off in lieu, allows them to take off days off, whenever they want. So make sure that if your time off in lieu policy in your company is that you only allow them to take off an hour or two, that you have a time off in lieu policy that says time off in lieu can only be taken in blocks of 3 hours or whatever it is. And if there is an exception, that's fine. You can put in an exception, but that the manager has that intervention, say, no, look, you've requested 2 days. That's not how it works. Okay. Oh, and I just say thanks. I've already just answered that. Sorry. So if a standard working week for a staff member is 25 hours a week, but it may be 6 hours on one day for another, how do you record the standard working hours in the Toil box? So that's a real question. It's actually very simple to do. So what you're going to do is you are going to, I'm just going to pull this down the way here. So very important here is that you are setting up their work pattern correctly. So I'll just show you here. I'm not going to go into work patterns too much because we have a lot of webinars done on that and I can talk to people individually, but I'm just going to show you here is that if you go into the directory here, so let's look at Liz again. All right. So let's have a look at Liz's work pattern. And her work pattern, she's a funny work pattern. So she works 9 to 1, 10 to 5, and 7 to 10. So when in her time off in lieu patterns, her work pattern is going to override her daily amount. So you need to make sure. So if I was setting up here, just want to make sure I've got the right question here. So I would set her Toil up as that she works 25 hours. Okay, because her work pattern is all over the place, don't worry about it. You can leave the standard working days and hours as here is fine. But when she requests Toil, what's going to come out is her work pattern. If she's on, so put her on an hourly work pattern and make sure her work pattern is set up correctly. And then when she requests Toil, it's going to come out in hours. Okay, it'll work what section she's working, that 6-hour day or that 5-hour day and a 3-hour day, whatever it is. But if you want to come talk to me, maybe I didn't explain that real good. If you want to come talk to me, I'm happy to go through that better with you. How do you add in ad hoc types of leave for particular individuals? So leave types are controlled by the office. So if you have one person in the entire office who you allow study leave to, if you add a study leave type, it is going to go in for the entire office. So what I would suggest in that situation is that you're either doing manual adjustments for that person. So you come in here. If you don't want anybody to see that you have a study leave option, I would come in here and do it as manual adjustments. Okay, and so that it's an individual decision that you've had with that individual, because those leave types you put in, and once you put them into the office, they're going to come in here into that drop down menu here. And if it's something that you've really just done on an individual basis, maybe it's like wedding leave or something like that you may have given to somebody on the senior management team or something like that, you don't want it to be an option for other people, I would not put it as a leave type. I would put it in here as the manager will come in here and put it in here as a manual adjustment to that person. So it's just something that you've this an agreement that you've made with the individual, and you always have a log of it. But it's something that's how I would manage ad hoc leave. Which is exactly the one. I must make sure to read the question ahead. Is how do you put in an allocation of study for leave for individuals? So when you can put it in as a study leave type. Okay, so you go into your settings here. You go into offices, and we're going to go into our head office here again. Okay, and you're going to create it as a leave type. And we're going to call it study leave. So again, this is something that you need to decide. Are you happy for everybody in the organization to see that Liz is on study leave, or do you want it to be that private leave type? So for this, I'm going to make it as private, and it's not deductible. So maybe I'm allowing her to take 3 days study leave. Or whichever it is. So that is, I'm going to put it here, study leave. Now, once I put it here as a leave option, everybody in the company is going to have an option of taking study leave. So if you do not want them to have that option, do not put it here. So you see, she has an option here of study leave. So if you do not want her to have that option, do not put it there. And so when anybody who requests a study leave, now there's always a management intervention in place. The manager will request that leave. The individual will request that leave, and the manager will either approve or reject. If they approve it, no days will come out, but it will be recorded. So if you're allowing somebody to take 3 days study leave, what I would suggest doing personally is give them a manual adjustment here of 3 days. So give them 3 days for study leave, and then they can take the days off as annual leave. So that and you can see that they've taken and in the notes section here, they can say that's their study leave. But that is how I would manage the study leave side of it. So we enter timesheets in a billing system in 15-minute units. Can this be accommodated? So our timesheet reports are downloading the amount of hours that people work. So what I would suggest to you is, if you would like to come and speak to us afterwards, what I would have to see how we can, what kind of report that your payroll system is requiring, and see, can we emulate it, and see, can we round it up to those 15 minutes, which, anything can be done, kind of a report. But please come and talk to me afterwards, and we can see, can we do that for you. I don't think it's an insurmountable task. Is the toil rate for an hour, or is there an option for 1.5 for working, which is in addition to the weekly 40-hour week? So no, toil is done on a per, if you work over per hour, you don't have a bank holiday time or anything like that. But we do have, which I'll be going through next month, is the payable hour option, where you can do what those extra days may be of worth to payroll, but we don't accrue. You don't accrue double time on a Saturday or a Sunday. It's purely done on a per day basis. When I selected add new and holiday, when I select add new holiday entitlement rate, I am unable to select the date. We have a policy that every employee has worked 3 years. So I'm pretty sure I'm able to answer this question straight away, because it's one that I get quite often. So I'm going to show you here. Actually, I'll go into Liz here. So when you're editing the annual leave, I'm just conscious of time here as well. So when you're entering the annual leave, the really important is you cannot change this date over here. Why can't you change this date over here? It's because it can't be before the day the top line has ended. So if you want to change this date here, you've got to change the top line. So if I want to change that to the 2nd of January, if I press save, I press submit rather, you see here, it's dictated here what's going to happen over here. So to change the line, you need to change the line above here. Okay. So, she said you're answering this. Thank you. It's a pre-COVID issue, but when we were all working on site, how do you prevent a member of staff not clocking in and out for lunch and having that 1 hour for lunch automatically adding to the toil count and inflating it? And is that an issue HRLocker can be programmed to tackle? Paul, we can certainly talk about it afterwards, but definitely if you are using toil, it is, and if people are not clocking in and out for lunch, if you're actually physically using that clocking in on a button, they need to be clocking in and out for lunch. And as well as that, for your own sake, that you're actually recording their break times as well. And that's is a huge part of the timesheets, is that you need to be recording break times. So we can have a chat about it, but to be honest, I think the answer to that is they have to clock in and out for their breaks. And really that's also for yourselves to make sure that you're recording their breaks as well. Is the video being sent out? Yes, it is. The lovely Jenny here will upload it to YouTube and then send it out to you. And I have 3 more questions, if that's okay. Can employees enter their own sick leave, or does their manager have to do it for them? So an employee can enter their own sick leave. They'll come here to the time off section. There's a whole section over here for sick leave. Really important here for the sick leave is that this does not negate the fact that it doesn't supersede your sick leave policy. So if you have a sick leave policy that you require somebody to phone in to say that you're sick, or just phone in and talk to their manager, that they have to do that. It's not enough that they just come here to HRLocker to record their sick leave. So really important is that as part of your sick leave policy, which I'm happy to share people to sick leave policy, what we say in ours is that we require people to phone, and then we require people before they return to work that they come into here to HRLocker and record their sick leave. Now the manager can do that on their behalf if the person's quite ill or whatever, but if an individual comes here and they can upload their sick leave really nicely, they can upload their sick cert here as well. So if they know they're going to be out for the week or whatever it is, they can do that. And then also we do have that COVID-19 related. The other nice little setting here is you go into your settings here and you can decide who you want to, where is it over here? Who you want to see the sick leave request. So yes, a manager will always be notified of that John was out sick, but maybe somebody in payroll or maybe a HR person or something like that may want to also get that notification when somebody logs sick leave. So in your company settings, you can put in here, is there anybody additional who wants to be notified about sick leave? How can we access the present webinar recordings, please? So I shall ask Jenny to put the list on. So it's on our YouTube channel, but we can send some out. And we do have a webinar once a month as well. And I'm really happy to, if there is a topic that you'd like me to cover, please just drop me an email or drop me a message through LinkedIn or something like that. And really happy to take that on board if there's an area that you'd like me to cover. How often do you input your public holidays? So we upload the public holidays, we upload the full year of public holidays. And for 99% of countries, they don't change. They change. But there are some countries that they kind of change, or it's dictated by certain things that are happening. So those countries we may edit as we go sometimes, if there's just a change in country legislation or something like that. But we would usually have public holidays at least a year in advance put up there. But you do need to download them every year to update for yourselves, okay? And okay, so the average working week is now 8 hours versus 7, okay? But when a staff member looks to take a day off, it's taking 8 hours versus the real value, which is 7. So they're effectively losing an hour of toil. Does that require a manual adjustment? I'm actually going to take that one offline. I think that maybe we can schedule a call to discuss how that would work, because I'm not 100% sure what way that's set up, and I don't want to give you an answer if that's not the correct one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a meeting call, and we can schedule time to chat about that. Okay. If you had holidays from December 2020 that were not approved and approved in 20, does that come out of your 2020 or 20? So if, for example, you have a week in December and you're only approving now, it's not going to subtract. So you need to make a manual adjustment. You need to come into your time off and make a manual adjustment. Scroll all the way down here and add an adjustment and minus whatever days they have here, because that leave year has been closed off. Okay. Do we have a time limit for employees to take the carryover holidays? So no, we don't. If I do know a lot of companies put that in, that they want their 5 days used before March or whatever it is, and that's something that you'll need to manage as a company. So we don't say that those carryover policies are going to die out by March. Really, it's something I think that a company needs to manage internally, that if somebody takes those 5 days, that if somebody carries over 5 days or whatever it is, whatever your carryover policy is, that they know that they only have 5 days to use them. And my last one is not a question. It says, okay, thanks a mil. So that is all the questions I have. Yes, I certainly, please do. I always say this in most webinars, is if there's anything that you'd like to go through, we have a team here who, we're happy to help. We're happy to go on a call, and I'd love to hear feedback as well. So if there is any specific area or any topic like that you'd like me to go through, please drop me an email or a LinkedIn message, or loads of ways to contact me. Then we can happy to do the next webinar on that. And just one final note before I leave is we do have a really lovely podcast coming out on the I think it's the 2nd of February, which is it's really good. And it's about all the employment law updates, and we'll also have the employment law updates. So I certainly recommend tuning into that. We have Derek McKay from Adair HR who did the podcast with me, and some lovely topics around kind of the new legislation that's new just updates that are around. So please, I would suggest tune in. And again, any podcast topics or anything like that you'd like me to go over, happy to have any feedback. So hope you guys all found that useful. It was my first time using Zoom, so everything went great. So thank you for your patience, and talk to you all soon. Take care.